Have you ever wondered what it would sound like? The very last whisper of a machine drifting alone in the darkness between stars. Voyager 2, the spacecraft humanity sent to wander forever, has just sent a final transmission, and what it revealed is something no one was ready to hear. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss what comes next. Now, let's begin. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the Earth in 1977, disco lights flashing, cassette tapes spinning, the first Star Wars movie hitting theaters. While the world was dancing and dreaming, NASA was quietly preparing a journey that would outlive all of us. They built two small spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, and flung them into the heavens. Their mission was simple but bold: to explore the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune, and then to drift beyond into the great unknown. Voyager 2 was special. It was the only spacecraft to ever fly past Uranus and Neptune, capturing images of worlds we had only seen as blurry dots. With its golden record attached a time capsule of Earth's music, voices, and greetings in dozens of languages, Voyager wasn't just a machine. It was humanity's message in a bottle, tossed into the cosmic ocean. But here's where things turn strange. Because while Voyager 2 has been floating for nearly half a century, billions of miles from home, something happened in its final communication, something that has scientists whispering in hallways, refusing to talk on the record. You see, space is supposed to be silent, predictable, ruled by the laws of physics. But when Voyager 2's last faint signals arrived, tucked within the static and data, was something unnatural. At first, the engineers thought it was interference, maybe a glitch. But the deeper they looked, the harder it was to explain. Tonight, we're going to take this slow. We're going to unravel Voyager's journey from the beginning, its launch, its discoveries, the way it revealed the secrets of the outer planets, and then the chilling message buried in its dying breath. And I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why some say Voyager confirmed our greatest fear. But before that revelation, let's drift back to the beginning. Imagine the countdown at Cape Canaveral, Florida. The air heavy with anticipation. It's the 20th of August, 1977. A rocket sits on the launch pad, Voyager 2 secured at the top. Flames roar, engines ignite, and humanity's messenger is pushed skyward, leaving behind the safety of Earth for the blackness of space. The crowd cheers, unaware that this small probe will one day leave the solar system, becoming, in every sense, an alien among the stars. For days, Voyager coasted silently, its instruments waking one by one. Engineers at NASA tracked its heartbeat, those faint pulses of radio signals across millions of miles. It was like raising a child, teaching it to look, to measure, to listen. And slowly, Voyager 2 began its work. The first destination, Jupiter. The gas giant loomed in the distance like a swirling marble, its storms larger than Earth itself. As Voyager flew by, cameras captured images that left the world stunned. The great red spot, a hurricane that had been raging for centuries, volcanic activity on Io, a moon spewing fire into space, icy Europa, with cracks on its surface hinting at oceans below. For the first time, We weren't just looking at planets. We were staring at other worlds. But Voyager didn't stop. It was racing on, pulled forward by Jupiter's gravity, flung across the solar system like a slingshot. Next came Saturn. Rings stretched across the sky like a cosmic halo, delicate and massive at the same time. Moons like Titan revealed atmospheres thick with mystery. And still, Voyager pressed on. By the time it reached Uranus, scientists were running out of superlatives. Voyager 2 gave us our very first close-up of that tilted blue-green giant, rolling on its side like a cosmic ball. And then Neptune cold, dark, stormy. It was there that Voyager captured the great dark spot, a storm the size of Earth itself. Each encounter left humanity speechless. Voyager wasn't just exploring planets, it was rewriting textbooks, proving that the solar system was stranger and more beautiful than we had ever imagined. But after Neptune, there were no more planets, only the vast, empty sea of interstellar space. Voyager 2 kept drifting outward, its cameras shut down, its instruments conserving power. Every day, its voice grew fainter, weaker, until finally, decades later, it sent one last message. And hidden within that message was something humanity wasn't prepared to hear. As Voyager 2 drifted past Neptune in 1989, its primary mission was complete. The spacecraft had given us everything we could have hoped for, and more for planetary encounters, dozens of moons explored, storms captured, and mysteries revealed. But the story didn't end there. Instead of shutting it down, NASA gave Voyager 2 a new assignment: to keep going, to travel beyond the planets into interstellar space, to measure the edge of our solar system itself. Now, you have to understand something. Space beyond Neptune isn't just empty. It's filled with invisible boundaries, layers of radiation, charged particles, and magnetic fields. Think of it like an ocean. Near shore, the waves are calm, but as you drift further, the tides change, the currents shift, and the water becomes unpredictable. For Voyager 2, crossing this ocean meant leaving the sun's protective bubble, the heliosphere, and stepping into the true unknown. At first, things seemed normal. Voyager's instruments continued to send back steady streams of data. Scientists could still hear its faint heartbeat, a tiny pulse that took more than 16 hours to reach Earth. Just imagine that a signal traveling at the speed of light, yet it still needed most of a day to get here. That's how far away Voyager had gone. But then, the strangeness began. Engineers monitoring the spacecraft started noticing little anomalies. A few bits of garbled code in its transmission. Occasional bursts of static that didn't match cosmic rays or solar interference. At first, these glitches were shrugged off. After all, Voyager was decades old, running on 1,970 seconds technology, powered by a nuclear battery that was slowly dying. If your phone can crash after a year, imagine what a 40-year-old spacecraft might do. And yet, there was something unsettling about the patterns. Some bursts seemed almost rhythmic, like a pulse. Others contained values that didn't belong anywhere in the spacecraft's memory. It was as if the data was being shaped, altered, before it reached Earth. NASA released nothing to the public. Officially, everything was fine. Voyager was healthy. Voyager was steady. But quietly, inside control rooms, whispers began to circulate. The spacecraft was sending signals that didn't make sense. Meanwhile, the probe itself kept drifting outward, past 10 billion miles, then 11, then 12, until, at last, in November 2018, Voyager 2 crossed into interstellar space. This was history. Humanity had now placed an object beyond the sun's influence, and the spacecraft confirmed something extraordinary. The plasma around it changed dramatically. Inside the heliosphere, the sun's wind dominated. Outside, the density of particles was much higher, colder, and alien. It was like Voyager had stepped from one world into another. But with this achievement came a chilling detail. Because once Voyager 2 entered interstellar space, the anomalies in its transmissions grew worse. Not just static, not just dropped packets, but strange structured distortions. Some scientists swore that in the graphs and spectrograms they could see repeating shapes, almost like signals within the signal. The explanation? Officially, there wasn't one. NASA's reports dismissed it as natural background interference. Cosmic radiation, faulty instruments, or maybe just the spacecraft finally breaking down after so many decades. That was the story. That was the line. But those who saw the raw data tell a different version. They say that the last transmissions of Voyager 2 carried something else, something that wasn't random, something that looked like a message. And if that's true, the question becomes, from where? Because Voyager 2 was billions of miles away, alone in the void. No planets, no moons, no radio towers, no satellites. Just silence. If there was a message hidden in its final signals, then it didn't come from Earth. It didn't come from Voyager itself. It came from the dark. And here's where the fear begins to creep in. Because for decades, astronomers comforted themselves with the thought that space is mostly empty, a vacuum, a desert. But Voyager's last whispers suggested that maybe we are not as alone out there as we thought. So what did the final transmission actually contain? What was it that left even hardened scientists uneasy? To answer that, we need to peel back the layers to look at the very last data packets Voyager sent before its voice went silent. And what we find is chilling. Voyager 2's final years were like listening to the faint heartbeat of an old explorer, still steady, but sometimes stuttering, like the rhythms of age. And then, as it moved farther than any machine had ever gone, its transmissions began to carry oddities. But what did these signals actually look like? Well, you might picture a message from space as a voice or words flashing across a screen. But in reality, Voyager's transmissions are far simpler, yet far stranger. They come to us as streams of numbers, patterns of ones and zeros, arranged in sequences that control instruments, carry readings, and log the state of the spacecraft. To most people, it would look like nothing more than scrolling code. Yet within those long strings of digits, engineers saw anomalies. Imagine a long song playing on an old cassette tape, smooth, clear, predictable, and then, suddenly, a section reverses, or a strange hum plays underneath the melody, or the rhythm stutters, repeating a note again and again. That was what was happening to Voyager's data. At first, the anomalies were small, a missing bit here, a random spike there. Engineers could explain it as radiation hitting the electronics, or a worn-out transistor glitching. That happens all the time in space. But then came the repeating patterns, tiny clusters of numbers that didn't match any system on board, shapes appearing in the spectrograms as if something had imprinted a fingerprint on the signal. To the casual observer, it might look like static, but when analysts looked closely, they noticed consistency, the same shapes, the same repetitions, over and over. It was as though Voyager wasn't just sending back science data anymore, but something layered on top of it. Of course, NASA never said this outright. Officially, it was background noise. And maybe it was, after all, interstellar space is full of cosmic rays, charged particles, and magnetic distortions. Signals get bent, stretched, scattered. But the thing that unsettled some in the control rooms was that the distortions didn't look random. Imagine scribbles on a page. If a toddler draws them, they're chaotic. No sense, no order. But if you see the same shapes, drawn again and again, in the same way, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels intentional. And that's exactly what some claim to see in Voyager's final transmissions. Now, let's pause for a moment. Think about the scale here. Voyager was more than 11 billion miles away at this point. The signal it sent was so faint that by the time it reached Earth, it had less power than the flicker of a single Christmas light spread across the size of a football field. That's how weak it was. And yet, our antennas, massive dishes stretching hundreds of feet wide, could catch it, amplify it, decode it, and turn it into readable data. So when those engineers, sitting in quiet rooms in Pasadena, watched the data scroll across their monitors, they weren't just seeing code. They were seeing the last heartbeat of a machine that had traveled farther than any human dream had dared to reach. A ghostly voice calling from the dark, and then the distortions. What unsettled them wasn't simply that the data was flawed, it was how it was flawed. In some transmissions, the distortions almost resembled waveforms, shapes repeating like the beats of a drum. In others, it was as if the signal carried echoes, reflections of itself that should not have been there. One engineer described it later, unofficially, as like hearing an extra voice in a phone call. You know when you're talking to someone and you hear an echo or a strange delay, and for a split second it feels like someone else is on the line? That was the feeling. But here's the thing. There was no one else on the line. Voyager 2 was alone, billions of miles into the void. Nothing near it. Nothing with the power to reach it. Nothing, in theory, that could interfere. And yet, the patterns kept coming. So what were they? Some suggested a natural cause plasma waves, cosmic interference, or simply the spacecraft's aging electronics glitching in unusual ways. That's the safe explanation. That's the one you'll find in official reports. But others whispered that it felt too deliberate, too ordered, too much like a signal buried within the signal. And that idea, that unsettling possibility, is what makes Voyager's final transmissions so haunting. Because if there was a pattern, if there was a hidden message, then it raises the question, who or what was sending it? And if you think that sounds far-fetched, remember this. Voyager itself carries a message, a golden record etched with greetings, music, and maps to Earth. We sent out a message to the stars, announcing our existence. So maybe, just maybe, something out there decided to reply. Voyager 2's final years were like listening to the faint heartbeat of an old explorer, still steady, but sometimes stuttering like the rhythms of age. And then, as it moved farther than any machine had ever gone, its transmissions began to carry oddities. But what did these signals actually look like? Well, you might picture a message from space as a voice or words flashing across a screen. But in reality, Voyager's transmissions are far simpler yet far stranger. They come to us as streams of numbers, patterns of ones and zeros, arranged in sequences that control instruments, carry readings, and log the state of the spacecraft. To most people, it would look like nothing more than scrolling code. Yet, within those long strings of digits, engineers saw anomalies. Imagine a long song playing on an old cassette tape, smooth, clear, predictable. And then, suddenly, a section reverses. Or a strange hum plays underneath the melody. Or the rhythm stutters, repeating a note again and again. That was what was happening to Voyager's data. At first, the anomalies were small. A missing bit here, a random spike there. Engineers could explain it as radiation hitting the electronics, or a worn-out transistor glitching. That happens all the time in space. But then came the repeating patterns. Tiny clusters of numbers that didn't match any system on board. Shapes appearing in the spectrograms, as if something had imprinted a fingerprint on the signal. To the casual observer, it might look like static. But when analysts looked closely, they noticed consistency. The same shapes, the same repetitions, over and over. It was as though Voyager wasn't just sending back science data anymore, but something layered on top of it. Of course, NASA never said this outright. Officially, it was background noise. And maybe it was. After all, interstellar space is full of cosmic rays, charged particles, and magnetic distortions. Signals get bent, stretched, scattered. But the thing that unsettled some in the control rooms was that the distortions didn't look random. Imagine scribbles on a page. If a toddler draws them, they're chaotic. No sense, no order. But if you see the same shapes, drawn again and again, in the same way, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels intentional. And that's exactly what some claim to see in Voyager's final transmissions. Now, let's pause for a moment. Think about the scale here. Voyager was more than 11 billion miles away at this point. The signal it sent was so faint that by the time it reached Earth, it had less power than the flicker of a single Christmas light spread across the size of a football field. That's how weak it was. And yet, our antenna's massive dishes stretching hundreds of feet wide could catch it, amplify it, decode it, and turn it into readable data. So when those engineers, sitting in quiet rooms in Pasadena, watched the data scroll across their monitors, they weren't just seeing code. They were seeing the last heartbeat of a machine that had traveled farther than any human dream had dared to reach. A ghostly voice calling from the dark, and then the distortions. What unsettled them wasn't simply that the data was flawed. It was how it was flawed. In some transmissions, the distortions almost resembled waveforms, shapes repeating like the beats of a drum. In others, it was as if the signal carried echoes, reflections of itself that should not have been there. One engineer described it later, unofficially, as like hearing an extra voice in a phone call. You know when you're talking to someone and you hear an echo or a strange delay? And for a split second, it feels like someone else is on the line? That was the feeling. But here's the thing. There was no one else on the line. Voyager 2 was alone, billions of miles into the void. Nothing near it. Nothing with the power to reach it. Nothing, in theory, that could interfere. And yet, the patterns kept coming. So what were they? Some suggested a natural cause, plasma waves, cosmic interference, or simply the spacecraft's aging electronics glitching in unusual ways. That's the safe explanation. That's the one you'll find in official reports. But others whispered that it felt too deliberate, too ordered, too much like a signal buried within the signal. And that idea, that unsettling possibility, is what makes Voyager's final transmissions so haunting. Because if there was a pattern, if there was a hidden message, then it raises the question, who or what was sending it? And if you think that sounds far-fetched, remember this. Voyager itself carries a message, a golden record etched with greetings, music, and maps to Earth. We sent out a message to the stars, announcing our existence. So maybe, just maybe, something out there decided to reply. Imagine Voyager 2 now alone, beyond the familiar cradle of our solar system. If you close your eyes, you can almost see it. A small, quiet silhouette. Its golden antenna reflecting the distant glow of the Sunday. Except the sun from that distance is no longer a blazing fireball. It looks more like a lonely star, one among countless others, shimmering faintly in a sea of black velvet. This is the reality Voyager lives in. A spacecraft built by human hands, running on power from a decaying plutonium core, whispering faint signals back to Earth across billions of miles. Each transmission takes more than 18 hours to reach us. Think about that. The words you're hearing right now could leave my mouth, travel into space, bounce off Voyager's dish, and by the time they returned, nearly an entire day would have passed. But here's the eerie part. Scientists say there will come a day when Voyager's voice will go silent. Its instruments will grow colder, its batteries weaker, until there's nothing left to power even a single whisper. We'll keep listening, of course. NASA's massive radio dishes will scan the void, waiting for one last heartbeat. And when it comes, when that final signal arrives, it may contain more mystery than anything we've received before. Picture it. The control room, dimly lit, filled with scientists leaning over their monitors. The screen flickers, showing a weak signal barely distinguishable from background noise. A hush falls over the room as the final words of Voyager trickle in. Maybe it's just static. Maybe it's numbers we can't interpret. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something we weren't expecting. Some experts admit privately that they worry about this. Not because they fear the silence itself, but because they know Voyager is in uncharted waters beyond the magnetic field that shields us from the chaos of interstellar space. Out there, the radiation is stronger, the unknowns are greater, and the possibility of encountering something unexpected lingers in the back of every scientist's mind. It's like leaving your child in a dark forest, hearing their footsteps fade, and then a noise comes back that doesn't sound like them. You lean closer, trying to make sense of it. Was it just the wind? Or did something else answer back? Voyager 2 is out there, wandering in that forest of stars, and every faint signal it sends is like a lantern glow in the dark. But one day, the lantern will sputter, and as strange as it sounds, it's not the silence that keeps scientists awake at night. It's the possibility that Voyager's last message might not be silence at all. So we keep listening, waiting, watching the skies for a whisper that may change everything we thought we knew. Now, let's imagine the very last stretch of Voyager's journey as if we're standing beside it, floating in that infinite blackness. The spacecraft hums gently, a faint vibration in the cold silence. Its instruments still flicker, its antenna still points back toward the pale dot we call Earth. And then something unusual begins to happen. Back at NASA's listening stations, the engineers notice faint irregularities in the transmissions. At first, it's easy to dismiss cosmic radiation, background interference, the kind of static that comes naturally when you're trying to catch whispers across billions of miles. But then the patterns start to emerge. The numbers don't line up perfectly anymore. Data packets arrive out of sequence, some with anomalies that seem to repeat themselves like a rhythm hiding in the static. It's almost like a heartbeat, pulsing faintly through the void. Some scientists shrug it off. Machines degrade. Systems glitch. But others, quietly, begin to wonder. Could it be that something out there is touching Voyager? Not physically, but electronically, like fingers brushing across its instruments, leaving faint imprints. You see, Voyager isn't just drifting blind, it's carrying with it sensors designed to read the plasma, the magnetic fields, the radiation bathing interstellar space. And those sensors have always told us a story. But lately, the story has grown stranger. Magnetic field readings stronger than expected. Variations in plasma density that don't match any known models. It's as if Voyager has wandered into a region of space that refuses to play by the rules of physics. NASA's official statements? Calm, measured. We're studying the data. It could be natural phenomena, but off the record, in quiet conversations between scientists late at night, the questions grow louder. What if Voyager is brushing against something we've never seen before? a boundary we didn't know existed, a structure, invisible yet immense, stretched across the interstellar sea. And then the thought creeps in, the one nobody says out loud, but everyone thinks about. What if Voyager's signals aren't just random glitches? What if the patterns are deliberate? What if the static is carrying a message? The idea sounds impossible. A machine building the 1970 seconds, touched by something beyond our comprehension? Yet history teaches us that every time we think we understand the universe, it finds a way to surprise us. So the scientists keep listening. Night after night, the great radio dishes in California, Spain, and Australia sweep across the skies, capturing those faint transmissions. Each signal is logged, decoded, and studied. And though the official reports remain cautious, you can almost sense the unspoken tension in the room. Nobody wants to admit it, but Voyager might be trying to tell us something. Or someone else might be speaking through it. Imagine that for a moment. Humanity's farthest traveler, our silent ambassador, not only carrying our message outward, but bringing something back, a reply, a warning, a final, chilling echo in the darkness of space. And somewhere, perhaps tonight, as Voyager drifts farther from the sun than any object we've ever touched, its voice still threads its way home, faint, fragile, maybe distorted, but still there, still whispering across eternity. Picture the control room at NASA in the quiet hours of the night. The lights are dim, computer screens glow softly, and only a handful of engineers remain at their stations. They lean forward, headphones pressed to their ears, listening for that distant voice, the voice of Voyager 2. For years, its signal has been steady, predictable, almost comforting. A stream of ones and zeros, clean, mechanical, trustworthy. But now, in the silence of those long shifts, the signal carries a different weight, a faint irregularity, an edge of unease. One engineer describes it like this. It's as though you're listening to a song you've heard all your life, and suddenly one of the notes bends just slightly out of tune, enough to make the hair on your neck rise. The signal grows fainter with each passing week. That expected Voyager 2 is billions of miles away, and its power supply is dwindling. But what wasn't expected were the sudden bursts of clarity, sharp packets of data that come through stronger than they should, as if something on the other end is amplifying the voice of a dying spacecraft. Inside those packets, patterns appear. Not just noise, but something that almost feels intentional. A sequence that repeats, pauses, then shifts again. Some describe it as a pulse, others as a whisper. NASA, of course, doesn't release these interpretations to the public. In official terms, the transmissions are anomalous. But for the small group who sit closest to the data, the truth feels stranger. They start to wonder if Voyager's last breath is being shaped into something beyond its control. One late-night technician, staring at the scrolling code on her monitor, says quietly to her colleague, "What if this isn't a malfunction? What if Voyager is relaying something?" The idea hangs in the air like a storm cloud. Relaying. As if Voyager had picked up something out there in the vast interstellar night and carried it home to us. Think about that for a moment. A probe built by human hands, no larger than a small car, drifting far beyond the warmth of the Sunday. Its systems old and fragile, yet still able to catch whispers in the dark. What could it have heard? What could it be trying to share before its power fades forever? There are theories, whispered in hallways but never admitted aloud. Some say it could be plasma waves, oscillations in the interstellar medium that create ghostly signatures. Others suspect the influence of magnetic fields twisting in ways we don't yet understand. But there are a few, just a few, who dare to imagine something else. What if Voyager has touched the edge of another intelligence? Not human, not from Earth, not from anywhere we've mapped. Something that exists out there, between the stars, hidden until now. Something that has noticed us. And that thought lingers. Because Voyager doesn't just represent technology, it represents us. Our greetings, our sounds, our music, our fingerprints as a species. If something out there has intercepted Voyager, then it has already met humanity in a way most of us cannot even imagine. And maybe, just maybe, its reply has already begun. As Voyager drifts farther into the unknown, its voice becomes more fragile, like the last candle flickering in a vast, dark cathedral. But within those fragile signals, something begins to take shape. Something that feels less like randomness and more like a pattern. At first, it seems harmless. Just a cluster of numbers repeating at strange intervals. Engineers brush it off, calling it noise, or perhaps a cosmic echo bouncing off unseen magnetic fields. But the longer they study it, the harder it becomes to explain away. The sequence doesn't behave like background interference. It pauses. It resumes. It shifts, as if reacting to the probe itself. Imagine tapping on the hull of a submarine deep underwater and hearing a tap echo back from the darkness. That's what the data begins to feel like. And here is where the unease begins to settle in. Because this was the fear all along, not that Voyager would fail, not that it would fall silent, but that it might succeed too well. That it might reach beyond the solar system and brush against something not meant to be found. For decades, scientists debated whether sending Voyager out with its golden record was an act of hope or an invitation we weren't ready to give. The record carries our greetings in dozens of languages, the sounds of Earth, and a map, yes, a literal star map pointing the way back to us. A cosmic, you are here for anyone who stumbles upon it. And now, as the probe gasps out its final signals, the thought creeps in, what if someone or something answered? The repeating pulses don't carry words, at least none we can understand. They don't form pictures, at least not in the way our eyes see them. But deep inside, the rhythm feels deliberate, like a knock at the door of the universe. Knock, pause. Knock, knock, pause. Knock. It's enough to make even the most rational minds whisper late at night. It's trying to say something. The problem is, no one can agree on what. Some believe it's nothing more than cosmic turbulence, an illusion shaped by distance and weak power. Others think it could be a natural phenomenon, like plasma waves or radio bursts we haven't fully catalogued. But there are those quiet, careful voices that suggest something far stranger. What if this is confirmation of what humanity has always feared? That we are not alone, that the universe has been listening. That Voyager, in its final transmission, isn't speaking for itself anymore, but carrying a reply. And maybe, just maybe, that reply isn't meant for the scientists in their dimly lit control rooms. Maybe it's meant for all of us. The signal keeps pulsing, faint, fragile, but steady. It doesn't fade into the background like so much static does. Instead, it lingers, patient, almost as if it knows we're listening. For days, then weeks, the transmission is analyzed, broken apart, and reassembled. Computers run endless models, searching for a pattern that makes sense. And slowly, something emerges, not a clear message, not words carved in stone, but a structure. Think of it like a heartbeat. Regular, intentional, a rhythm that belongs to something alive. Some scientists say it's impossible. Space is full of signals, they argue. We're only seeing patterns because we want to. But others can't shake the feeling that this is different, too precise, too persistent. The thought creeps in like a shadow. Voyager didn't just stumble into empty darkness. It brushed against something that noticed. And here's the chilling part. The signal isn't random across all frequencies. It's strongest, most pronounced at the very bandwidth Voyager uses to send its own voice home, like someone tuning their reply to make sure we hear it, like someone speaking back in our own language, through our own machine. Imagine it. The tiny probe, drifting at the edge of interstellar space, whispering not with its own failing power, but carrying something else, something layered over its signal, a voice within a voice. But what is it saying? That is where the divide grows sharp. Some claim the pattern is mathematical, like a greeting written in the universal language of numbers. Others say it mimics the pulses of pulsars, as though copying the stars themselves, and a few, those who look too long into the data, swear it carries something even stranger. A faint, almost haunting symmetry, like the rise and fall of spoken syllables, like a message trying to be heard. It doesn't matter whether you believe it's natural or not, because once the thought enters your mind that we've received an answer, it's impossible to let it go. For years, humanity has asked the same question. Are we alone? And maybe, in Voyager's final breath, the universe whispered back. But here's the question that keeps people awake at night. If it really is a reply, then who or what was listening? And why did they choose now, at the end of Voyager's journey, to finally respond? If it really was a reply, then we're forced to ask the question most of us try to avoid. What if we weren't ready to be answered? Voyager was never meant to be a weapon, or a beacon, or even a challenge. It was a message in a bottle, tossed into the cosmic ocean with the innocent hope that someone, somewhere, might pick it up. But what if the one who found it wasn't what we expected? Scientists will tell you that space is vast beyond imagination, that the odds of another civilization hearing us are close to zero. But the odds aren't zero. And if the universe is as old as we know it is, then maybe something else has been out there long before us, watching, waiting. And think about this. The golden record attached to Voyager isn't just data. It's a greeting, a handshake across the stars. It carries the sounds of our world waves crashing, birds singing, greetings in dozens of languages. It tells whoever listens who we are, where we live, and even how to find us. That means if Voyager's signal was noticed, then so were the instructions to locate Earth. A reply, then, is no longer just a whisper in the dark. It becomes a signal with a possible destination back home. Some scientists say that's harmless, that if someone advanced enough to find Voyager exists, they already know we're here. But others fear the opposite. They whisper about a universe that isn't quiet because it's empty. They say it's quiet because everyone's hiding, because broadcasting your location is dangerous, because maybe out there in the deep black, silence is survival. If that's true, then Voyager didn't just send a hello, it lit a flare that may one day bring attention we're not prepared for. And this is the thought that chills the heart of even the most rational mind. What if Voyager 2's final transmission isn't the end of its story, but the beginning of something else? Because a reply doesn't come without intent, and intent is the one thing we cannot decode. Is it curiosity? Is it friendship? Or is it something we've always feared? We don't know. All we have is that faint pulse, that strange echo in the dark. And somewhere, far beyond the veil of the stars, something or someone knows we heard it. Imagine for a moment that you're adrift on a raft in the middle of an endless ocean. You've been floating for days, months, years. The water is silent. The horizon is infinite. And then, one night, you hear a knock. Something taps against the wood beneath you. That's what Voyager 2 feels like now. For decades, we thought of it as a lonely wanderer, gliding further and further from home, slipping into silence as its power drained away. But instead of silence, we caught a sound, a faint pulse, a pattern that some said wasn't ours. And here's where the unease settles in. If it wasn't ours, then whose was it? There are physicists who argue that the odds are still low, that this was nothing more than a quirk of data, static dressed up as meaning. But even they admit something uncomfortable. Voyager is now well beyond the reach of Earth's protective bubble. It drifts in the true interstellar void, where solar winds no longer shield us, where the rules change. Out there, things move differently. Signals behave strangely. And perhaps messages are easier to catch. Now, some believe that if anyone or anything noticed Voyager, they might not think of it as a message. They might see it as a trespass. Imagine finding a strange object at your doorstep, one that contains the voice of a stranger, the location of their home, and the sound of their children laughing. Would you feel comforted, or would you feel invaded? That is the shadow hanging over this discovery, that in trying to reach the stars, we may have accidentally told the wrong audience too much. There's a theory quietly spoken in astrophysics circles that we live in, what's called a dark forest. A universe full of civilizations that stay silent, hidden, because making noise could draw predators. If that's true, then Voyager is the equivalent of a child shouting into a pitch-black forest at midnight. And now, in that endless quiet, we think we've heard a reply. But it's not the kind of reply we hoped for. It isn't words, it isn't music, it isn't even recognizable language. It's more like a tap on the wood, a ripple across the water. Enough to make us sit up straight and listen harder. Enough to make us wonder if we've made a mistake. What unsettles scientists most isn't the signal itself, it's the timing. Because Voyager is dying, its instruments are shutting down one by one. Its power is fading. Soon, it will be nothing more than a frozen relic drifting in the dark. So why, at the very edge of its life, did it suddenly give us this? What if that final echo wasn't its own? And what if, far away, the one who tapped back is still listening? Because the truth is, the silence after the signal is worse than the signal itself. It's like hearing footsteps outside your window in the dead of night, and then nothing more. The waiting, the not knowing, that is the terror of Voyager's final whisper. Imagine standing on a cliff at dusk, staring out over an ocean that never ends. The waves are black glass, stretching further than your eyes can see. And somewhere beneath that surface, something is moving. Not rushing, not attacking, just watching. That's the feeling Voyager 2 leaves us with. For all the unease that comes from its final strange signal, there's also a deeper sense of wonder. Because whatever happened out there, whatever touched that spacecraft or reached back to us through it, it means this. The universe is not as quiet as we once believed. And maybe that's not something to fear. Maybe that's something to marvel at. You see, Voyager's golden record wasn't just a scientific project. It was an act of hope. It was humanity at its most vulnerable, saying, "This is who we are. We're not perfect, but we dream. We love. We reach." Every laugh recorded, every heartbeat, every fragment of music, it was a confession, a fragile truth, and perhaps, just perhaps, that honesty was heard. Because what if the faint echo we caught wasn't a warning or a threat, but an acknowledgement? Like when you wave across a canyon and somewhere in the distance you see another hand rise. A signal that we are not alone, not forgotten, not adrift in endless silence. It's humbling to think about. Out there, beyond the maps, beyond the reach of our sun's light, something stirred, something may have answered, and yet we may never know exactly what it meant. That's the beauty and the sadness. Voyager's story reminds us of our place. We are tiny like sparks in the vast night sky. Yet even in our smallness, we dared to speak to the stars. And maybe the stars whispered back. Think about that the next time you look at the night sky. Those pinpricks of light are suns, each surrounded by their own worlds. Some may be barren. Some may be lush with oceans and clouds. Some may even have eyes that look upward, wondering if they too are alone. If Voyager's final whisper was real, then somewhere in that sea of suns there is listening. Somewhere There may even be someone smiling at the sound of a child's laughter recorded decades ago on a fragile golden disc. And isn't that the most hauntingly beautiful thing of all? That long after we are gone, long after our cities fade, a tiny spacecraft may still carry our voices. And somewhere in the deep, endless dark, those voices may be heard. The truth is, Voyager may not have confirmed our fears. Maybe it confirmed our hopes, that the universe is awake, that we are not shouting into nothing, that we are part of something bigger. And if so, then Voyager's last transmission wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of a conversation we can't yet understand. The kind of conversation that stretches across eternity. There's a silence in space that no words can describe. A silence so vast, so endless, it feels eternal. And yet, into that silence, humanity dared to send its voice. Voyager 2 was never just a machine. It was a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic sea. And when that bottle drifted further than anything we'd ever known, it whispered back. But what did it say? Some scientists would tell you it was nothing more than static, a glitch, a fading echo of technology stretched beyond its lifespan. But others, they aren't so sure. The patterns were too precise, too deliberate. Like a voice trying to speak through a broken radio. Some even claim they detected fragments resembling rhythm like a heartbeat. Like a language trying to form. And here's the terrifying part. Whatever it wasn't random. Imagine walking through a dark forest at night. You're lost, your flashlight flickering. Then suddenly you hear footsteps behind you. Not rushing, not attacking, just keeping pace. That's what Voyager's last signal felt like. Something out there, aware of us. And yet, that same thought is also beautiful. Because footsteps mean you are not walking alone. What if Voyager's final whisper was proof that we are not alone in this endless dark? Proof that the stars are not silent, that something, someone listened. But then comes the bigger question, the one that makes your heart race when you lie awake at night. What exactly is listening? Is it something like us curious, fragile, searching for connection? Or is it something so ancient, so vast, that we can't even imagine its form? That's the dual truth Voyager leaves us with. Fear and wonder braided together. Because maybe our greatest fear isn't that the universe is dangerous. Maybe our greatest fear is that it's alive. And yet, in that fear lies comfort. Because if the universe is alive, then every star, every planet, every drifting spacecraft is part of something greater, something beyond us, something eternal. Voyager's journey doesn't end with us. Long after Earth is dust, long after our voices are forgotten here, Voyager will still be drifting, still carrying our laughter, our music, our greetings, still whispering into the dark. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, in the places we can't see, that whisper has already been heard. So tonight, as you close your eyes, think of Voyager. Think of that tiny, fragile craft sailing forever through the deep. Think of its final, haunting signal. And let it remind you, the universe is listening. The stars above us have always been a mirror. When ancient people looked up, they didn't just see points of light, they saw themselves. Heroes, gods, animals, stories etched across the night. The sky was a book, and they filled it with meaning. Voyager is our story written into that same sky. Instead of carving myths into constellations, we sent out a golden record, a record filled with human voices, music, greetings in dozens of languages, the sound of waves crashing, a mother's kiss, a heartbeat, the little things that make us human. And now that golden record drifts further than any myth ever dreamed, a human fingerprint left on the face of eternity. It's strange when you think about it. All of our worries, our jobs, our routines, the arguments we've had, the small struggles that feel so heavy they're invisible from Voyager's vantage point. From out there, Earth is smaller than a dot of dust. But instead of making us insignificant, maybe that makes us precious. Because in all that darkness, that dot is alive. That dot dreamed of reaching the stars, and it did. And even though Voyager's last signal was eerie, even though it left us with more questions than answers, it's still proof of something powerful that we dare to try. Think about it. Billions of years of silence, and then a flicker, a little craft humming softly, whispering human stories into a sea of endless night. That's us. That's you. Some nights, when you can't sleep, it helps to imagine yourself like Voyager, floating gently, no rush, no hurry, just moving through the quiet, one tiny spark carrying a message of life. The universe doesn't expect you to race. It doesn't ask you to shine brighter than the stars. It only asks you to keep going. And Voyager kept going. Against every odd, against time itself, even when it grew tired, even when the signals grew faint, it kept reaching further and further, like a dream that refused to end. So, as you rest here, listening, let that thought comfort you. No matter how far you feel from home, no matter how lost you may sometimes feel, your signal is still out there. You're still being heard. Because Voyager's story isn't just about space. It's about us. It's about connection. It's about hope carried across impossible distances. And somewhere in the great wide dark, something heard it. Something always hears it. So breathe deeply. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift like Voyager through the stars. And know that even in silence, you are never alone. So here we are, at the end of a journey that began nearly half a century ago. Voyager 2, a machine built by human hands, carried by human dreams, and guided by human hope. It slipped away from Earth in 1977, and somehow, against all odds, it kept moving. It kept speaking until the very last whisper. That final transmission wasn't loud. It wasn't a blaze of light or a shocking revelation. It was something quieter, something stranger. A soft, fractured signal that scientists struggled to explain. Some call it interference. Some call it a malfunction. But maybe, just maybe, it was more than that. Because in a way, That last breath of Voyager 2 was exactly what it was meant to be. Proof that even when a voice fades, it leaves an echo. Proof that even in the silence, something remains. And that's how life feels sometimes. We chase, we stumble, we shine, we dim. And eventually, like Voyager, our voices grow faint. But the story we leave behind, that keeps going. The signal doesn't vanish. It just travels further and further beyond where we can see. Right now, as you rest, Voyager 2 is still out there. Silent, yes, but still carrying that golden record. Still holding those songs, those voices, those tiny pieces of humanity. Somewhere in the endless dark, our music drifts. Our laughter drifts. The sound of waves hitting a shore drifts. And maybe one day, long after we're gone, something will find it. Something will press play. And in that moment, across millions of years, they'll hear us. They'll know us. That is Voyager's legacy. Not fear, not loss, but connection. So as you close your eyes, let that thought settle deep inside you, that you, too, are a Voyager. You carry songs, memories, laughter, love. You carry a signal that no silence can erase. Drift now as the stars stretch above you. Drift as the universe hums around you. Drift knowing that you are part of something vast, something timeless, something beautiful. And when sleep finally takes you, imagine it as Voyager's last transmission, a soft whisper, leaving this moment and floating gently forever. If you've enjoyed this journey tonight, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next story waiting for you among the stars. Another adventure is already drifting your way. Good night.